Minute break. So we are at General Manager's report.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and in many ways, what usually happens is a lot of the items that I'd be reporting on as activities are covered. I was going to mention here, as I mentioned before, the enhanced water supply from McConnell at a zero rate, which, as I mentioned, was effectively $187 per acre foot. We talked already a lot about the boil water advisory and all the stuff that we've done after that. I've already talked about the WIN Act costs, et cetera, receiving a letter from the Bureau on our allocation. But I do want to mention that in the last month, we have, as per the MOU, we posted the vacancy of our T3D3, which is our one combined position. Our D3 put in a letter of interest, and we have promoted our D3, that's Chad, to that position, so he's now T3D3. We've also, instead of recruiting for and backfilling with another D3, we're recruiting for to backfill with a D1 or D2, so we have somebody coming in that has some place to grow. We also are recruiting for our treatment operator T3, that's been a vacant position for quite some time, and I think Bill's pretty excited that we've got some good candidates actually that applied. Just a quick little update on our grants. The PACE and others are starting to work on our emergency electrical and SCADA repairs for the wells. The one that I brought before you in January, and then again in February for signature. This is the $477,000 grant that is for that. I just got a note from the state that said, we know that our signature is due on the funding agreement. It's still sitting in the management process to update it, but it'll get signed. I think our biggest challenge is it's a reimbursable. So in other words, if we pay PACE for some of the work they've done, we're not going to get reimbursed until that comes in. So I'm holding on to a PACE bill until next month, basically. But it is moving forward. We put in the order for some of the things we thought were going to take a long time to get here. The backwash ponds project, amazingly enough, the state has signed the funding agreement for their portion of that project. I think I've mentioned to you in the past that we're still in discussions and negotiations with Cal OES, which are the ones that are providing the FEMA portion of the funding, because they seem to think that lining the ponds with concrete is an improvement, and they don't pay for improvements. So regardless, actually tomorrow I have a coordination meeting with the state because they signed it. So as far as we're concerned, we're going to start the design work because they'll reimburse us for design work, etc. And that means, knock on wood, that we might actually see some construction starting for that project next year.
All right.
I think the board may not be fully aware, maybe Rick Fuss is, that the district did do a distribution improvement grant application, and I did get it. I did inquire about that. It's still in process. They're still trying to figure out what they're going to fund. And the first grant we asked for was design. I think it was. I don't remember. I think it's about a $5+ million potential grant, but I think the first
grant loan, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that one's still going. I would just say, as I mentioned to the board before, before we go get other grants, we need to actually do the grants that we have. So we're still working with our IT company on some of the other issues that we're dealing with, primarily internet service and all the rest. Thanks, and here I mentioned Emily, our volunteer, doing a lot of filing and putting. So one of the things that I've suggested to the board is that the district has a weakness in is that all of it just there's stuff everywhere and there's no real good documentation stuff thing, so. And again, part of it is just the last couple of years, everybody's been busy, so you just put it in a stack. So, that's it for now. Again, just as a reminder, you know, maybe for the community purposes, you do see an item on our agenda that's closed session. This is a performance evaluation. It's the 6-month performance evaluation is called for in the employment agreement between myself and you. As mentioned before, we, you know, trying to institute good practices for the district here. With that, Madam Chair, the operations report, I would just mention that it was obviously put together by our staff. Kayla does this top part, which is our snapshot of aging accounts, and we now no longer have a report on penalties, right, since we don't have penalties anymore. We have, you can see from Bill, 57 acre-feet of surface water in March. As he mentions, that's a new low, and obviously partially due to the unusual weather. Yep. You should have put multiple dots, snow. In your packet, we included the just completed but still not quite ready for publication 2022 Consumer Confidence Report. So that'll be soon posted on our website. We also will be inserting this and mailing this to everybody in the district. That's something that definitely Bill is involved in. You know, he's got some other things here about some of the issues and items that he's been working on, especially considering some of the challenges that we had before.
On that first page of that consumer confidence report,
Yeah.
it says down on the bottom right, for questions or concerns about your drinking water, you may attend our monthly meeting held the third Wednesday, or you may contact Bill. Should that be you instead of Bill?
Hey, Kayla. She's the one who's working on this yeah. It could be both of us. I mean, he's obviously the chief plant operator, but, and, you know, really on the distribution, as you see, there was that pressure relief valve that was, fixed by the field crew. The other one that's still got a steel plate on it, we have the valve there that we're looking to install, a 14-inch valve. The main reason for this is to give us more isolation valves, so if we have a leak on a window, we don't have to shut down the whole district. The whole area was completely encased in basically about a 3.5 by 4.5 foot concrete block. So Actioner had come in, had to break all this concrete to get out, and once they got down there, they had the fittings that we had thought were in there were different. So that's why it's covered up. We had to order the parts. They also did a lot of work working with Bill on going out and getting water samples for the boil water and running around trying to figure out how to best do that for the state. And we did bring on a new field crew. His name is Seth Allison. Actually was previously with Mountain Gate. That's it.
So basically, we have left Bill, Chad, and Roberto from the prior staff. That's it. Everybody else is new. And it's been a positive change.
Standing committee reports. Finance.
All right. Chair Fickus and I, last Wednesday the 12th, had a finance committee meeting. We went through an awful lot of the profit loss budget versus actual, the July 1 through March 31, and then also the January 1 through March 31. It was a good comparison. We know that there were problems in the first 6 months when we tried to do a mid-year budget review. The staff has done, I think, a pretty good job trying to create a little more transparency. Are there still some issues? Of course there are, and there will be. Hopefully most of them will be cleared up in next year's budget. And with some software changes that make tracking things a bit easier. We talked about water sales potentially, and if we are able to do that, you know, finding out what the actual costs are for transfer fees through the Bureau, possibly reaching out to Orland Artois to see their interest and try to figure out what we can come up with as a reasonable, I would say, profit from them, somewhere in the maybe $18 to $22 an acre foot for us. And the possibility of how to allocate that. I mentioned that I'd like to see it done in potentially 4 categories. Water treatment, distribution, a reserve for capital improvements or something, and an equal share put aside in a reserve account in case we have to in the future purchase water from McConnell or someone else again, so that we mitigate the impact to the customers. That's all for a board decision.
That'll come back to the board later.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, all we're doing is making recommendations in our committee. We will be,
I don't think we made that recommendation though.
no, we discussed it, so I'm not making any recommendation, just I'm explaining what were some of the discussions. One thing that we'll have to be starting with fairly soon is next year's budget. I'd like to see it done, if possible, by the July board meeting for approval.
Oh, we gotta have it done by June, right?
No, we actually have until September 1, because last year, the board we did not approve in July, but I think we did at the August meeting.
It was on the June thing, but it was not a public hearing, it wasn't listed as a public hearing, so we had to make sure we follow the rules and list it as a public hearing.
But we kept finding areas we had to tweak.
Yeah, to that, first of all, there was a discussion about potential, what to do if we have any water sales. That's if, right? So, I mean, those are all things that will come to the board. I will just say, I mean, I have reached out to Orland Artois, I've reached out to Hamaclusa Canal Authority. I've also told the Bureau, let your customers know we have water if we need to. So any water purchase agreements, any of those other stuff, that would actually come to the board, open session, and the use of the proceeds would be that. I will just mention, one thing I did find is in 2013, I believe the district made profit for reserves and other things of about $20 an acre foot. I think
That sounds familiar.
the other thing is, it is my goal that at the June meeting, you will be adopting a new budget for fiscal year. You can operate until September without an approved or adopted budget, but technically you're constrained by the previous.
Yes, you are. We discussed briefly the WIN Act, where we were, how much was the balance left on it, you know, and the possibilities of bringing it to the board for, do we go out and get a loan for it, pay it all off? We want to be timely, even though the Bureau has said you can probably stretch it into mid next year. Technically, we owe the balance this year. And my only concern there would be, let's not jeopardize our 15,300 acre feet by stretching it a little.
Right.
We are beginning to develop good relations with a number of other entities now, finally. Thank you to our general manager. And I'd like to see us maintain those. You know, kind of step up and say, yes, we are responsible. We will take care of our responsibilities.
So kind of off topic with that though, when you talk about, $20 an acre foot profit, has anybody said anything about wanting water?
We had that letter from, Orland.
Orland or
I know,
Toys had
but
sent
when
us a
you-
letter.
But
So-
when you reach out to them, do they say anything about that? Because theoretically, we can take our Toys water, if they do it, and you said reserves, but maybe that helps go to pay that WIN Act, and we don't have to get a loan. I mean, if that could theoretically be $200,000.
That's for the board to discuss.
Well, sure,
Yeah,
but
But we
it's
do
just,
know that the water treatment plant has the potential for having issues because of larger flow going through it this year. And I kind of see us trying to hedge our bets and protect ourselves. That's my thinking anyway.
Yeah, first of all, yes, they obviously sent us a letter. Now, you know, when I met with him, the general manager, he did remind me that what precipitated that letter was that they're looking to annex in a pretty large section of their district, and they're gonna need water. They also have, within their current district, some groundwater issues, and so they're thinking when there's a good year, they'd like to recharge their groundwater basin, which makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So the last I heard from him, he was gonna be basically surveying a bunch of his farmers to see who wants to buy this excess water. And, I think that's what they did last time. And then they would then pay for it through him, and then they would put it on their property and let it recharge into their groundwater basin. So that's the way he was thinking it. Now, they're gonna get 100% unrestricted allocation.
Yeah.
So if the annexation hasn't happened, maybe they don't need any water at 100% allocation.
Right.
So that's why I reached out to Hamaclusa Canal, because they have a lot of members that may have some different things. I mean, one downside is Sites has not been constructed yet. When Sites is constructed, these are the kind of years in which those districts would say, we'll buy some of your extra water and stick it in Sites for when we have a drought. So we may not be able to sell any water, but I think thinking about if we do, when we do, what do we do with the proceeds? And I guess back to the other thing that I know that you had asked that I hadn't had an answer to before is, it looks like the previous water purchase agreement with Orland Toys in particular, Orland Toys paid the bureau rate, the bureau surcharge, and paid the district $20 an acre.
I was, in my calculator, I was wondering if we couldn't include a small administrative fee to cover office staff time.
Yeah, I believe the $20.
It has to cover that,
It was in there.
yeah.
Well, we can negotiate, I mean, it's been years, there's gotta be
Right.
inflation, make it $30.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that.
Kind of depends on what the Bureau would let you do too.
Was there,
If you charge too much, they're gonna nix it.
Yeah.
is there anything else?
I do believe we did briefly mention the percent of customers paying and the concern there. And I think we discussed briefly also about possible solutions, and I wanted to bring it back to the board here and to the community to see if there were people interested in volunteering to help out. We can't come in and volunteer as board members. And probably spouses shouldn't either.
Well, we could,
Yeah, why not?
Most districts don't like that though.
so we could, but yes, our general manager thinks we volunteer our services up here, and that the volunteers should come from the public. So that's his thought process.
Well, is there a potential problem with board members working the office alongside of some of the staff potentially, are they here spying on me, that kind of a thing?
Oh, they would never.
You never know. So,
You just have to be cautious.
just have
Yeah,
to be
gotta be
cautious.
cautious.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I think back to our previous discussions, and as Director Beaver had mentioned before, providing you sort of an assessment of what is needed to be done, our capacity to do it, where we get that capacity. Like I said, I think we have an account clerk that's part-time, maybe we enhance that, but I think we're gonna need some volunteer stuff. We go to the community. If we don't, then we gotta figure out how else to fill that capacity. So that's all I'm saying. I just think You got it.
One last item, checking the numbers, with the 2265 from the Bureau for M&I, the 500 McConnell and the 168 gift, that brings us to 2,933 acre feet for this water here without touching any of the ag water. And I know we ran just under 1,800 acre feet, and over the last 2 years, we've had such a small amount of water, most of the customers are hesitant to use water, or they've given up, you know, the tree's done, I'm not replacing them, I'm not gonna irrigate the pasture, maybe it's too expensive. So I'm thinking that 2,900, then that's not including any well water, which could easily run us to 3,000, may be sufficient. You know, I'm not saying let's sell all the ag water, the irrigation water. I'm saying is we may have sufficient water to meet the needs of the district.
Well, what's the topic that you're gonna be discussing at the, finance committee and then bring it to the board?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think, again, I think part of, another thing, what's related to this in the finance committee is, you know, we probably need to do a decent job marketing the fact that we've lifted our
Yes.
drought, and that now everybody here is saving 30% on their water. Use as much as you can. You're saving 30%.
In 2017, a newsletter came out and it said the drought's over, use as much water as you can afford to pay for it. Maybe we should run that back out again. Let customers know.
I would
It's a
like
little-
I would like to see that, because I'm thinking we should
Mhm.
say that. And
Okay,
by the way, the more you use, the more you save. 30%.
Is that the
My
way?
wife has tried to convince me of that
Yeah.
every sale she's been to.
I need 3 pair of shoes because I'm saying.
Right, the rates are going from $1.04 to 72 cents. I mean,
Yeah, that's
come on.
Right.
I just really want to mention on the planning and steering that we now have a meeting set for May 3rd at 6 p.m. We've got,
6 p.m.?
yep,
Mhm.
Okay.
we have, after the last meeting, me and the other army of staff that we have are working through some draft of the admin policies and a few other things. We haven't gotten all of them. I've gotten copies of reserve policies from others, and I'm kind of thinking once we have a brief discussion at the planning committee, we'll refer that one in particular to the finance committee to help to do that one, and then got some others.
Okay. One last thing for the board. Our finance committee last meeting was at 4:30. And I know prior to being on the board, the committee had asked that most of these committee meetings, special meetings be done at 6 o'clock so that it was easier for them to attend. Do we need to address that here? You know, is this something we should reiterate? No, that's for the planning steering.
Oh.
The finance met at 4:30 a week ago. Do we need to rethink the various committee meetings and whatnot and set a definite time or not?
I don't think we have to set a definite time, we have to take that into consideration. I think the GM, because we had 3 different staff members here, wanted it earlier.
Okay.
However, we do prefer a 6 o'clock, because what did we have? One person in the audience?
There were a couple. One very silent one.
Yeah, and well, John was here, but he was video.
Yeah.
It was John, Terry, and I.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that just makes it, because in the past, which we don't like to dwell on, they would hold any meetings that they had very early in the morning, and nobody would attend. They're the people that are working, so they can't come, so we do prefer to have meetings, evening.
And it was usually just to hide stuff, to do it during the daytime.
Well, Sandy attended an awful lot. I remember sitting out there with her.
I think it should be at 6.
May 3rd.
Yep.
Okay. Okey doke, board member items?
I have one.
Okay,
These committee meetings, we had our planning committee meeting, and I made a comment about personnel, and Beverly and Scott both had comments, is why can't we have they were both in the meeting, but they can't make comments. So why can't we just have a board meeting? Until we get these policies and that, and the finance all up, just have a board meeting to deal with just those items, so that we can all contribute, because, we're doing a lot of,
repeat.
yeah. We sat in the committee meeting, the finance committee, and we went through the whole thing again tonight. We've been here for 3.5 hours now. Why not have 2 meetings instead? I'm asking a question. I don't know whether that's what we should do, or, because the Brown Act is what's,
If I can answer that a little bit, I think committee meetings are to workshop a lot of the issues and then bring recommendations back to the full board.
but you guys just reviewed, you didn't recommend, the finance committee was just review only.
And how much can you get ideas going with 2 people?
And the community.
Community's not coming to them, guys.
But then the community is coming to the meeting, and they've heard it again for the second time.
If those that do.
Yeah.
So, I think I mentioned that to Paul, is it perhaps a special meeting then? It's not just a finance standing committee, it would be called a special meeting of just finance, or a special meeting for planning and steering?
That is completely up to you, the board.
There you go.
Really, it is. I mean, the committee structure is very common for most districts, and most of the time you have like a finance committee, personnel committee, or whatever else it may be, ag committee, planning and steering. Sometimes there's an executive committee, but the Brown Act specifically restricts participation from any board member at a committee meeting that they are not a committee member of. And I actually confirmed this with our lawyer, so they can attend as members of the public. If they say anything and contribute, unfortunately, that is, we could get in hot water. So I would basically, to Director Lincoln's comment, and we talked about this before, I'm gonna throw this right into your lap. And if you would like to have the Planning and Steering Committee meeting at 6 p.m. on May 3rd to be a special meeting / board, I would call it more of a workshop of the Planning and Steering, and everybody can come, and it'll all be discussion items. Remember, we're not going to make any decisions, but basically it would handle the issue that Director Lincoln's mentioning. And that's fine. I mean, we'll do it that way. We can do that with finance. We can do that for anything. It just means you have more meetings.
But one thing you have to take into consideration, that if you're gonna have a board meeting, then it has to be spelled out on the agenda what you're going to vote on.
No, if we do a workshop, we wouldn't be voting on it.
There would be no voting, it'd be strictly a discussion.
You just do a special, yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know how that works, Erwin,
Okay.
you know?
I could see though
A
that you
gathering
What
to
do we do,
discuss
a
it.
workshop and then come up with recommendations to ourselves?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
I don't like that idea. I don't know why we couldn't have some action items on it if we're having a special meeting.
Well, again, if you want to call it a special meeting, you can definitely have action items. You can take action.
But they have to be spelled out on the agenda.
Of course,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I've got time to go to 6 o'clock meetings. Just tell me when.
I kind of think just write it first here because we've got a pretty good board that we all want to participate. Because, I mean, you guys heard what we discussed at the finance meeting. if you hadn't have been here, it wouldn't have made as much sense, I don't think, because you heard it, you were able to hear it all and know what was going on. So I think it's important. It would have been maybe just as important for you guys to, you know, have some input. I don't know what the answer is.
I know you guys felt strongly about my comment on the personnel thing, so.
Yeah,
And you sat out there and couldn't talk.
Right.
And I think, you know, especially, I'm not so sure about the finance committee, you know, I don't think the finance committee should be just doing review. You know, we're doing a review here.
yeah,
We went through it all again.
yeah, I agree with that.
You know, they should be working on the budget, things like that. The planning and steering, I think we should all meet, especially on that, until we get all these things, because we've got so many of them to work on. And, you know, let's just have a committee meeting.
Well, we can always try it, May 3rd, special meeting on planning and steering.
Okay.
With nothing on the agenda to vote on.
There may be.
Well, I was gonna
Well,
say,
then you gotta put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
if there are items that are gonna be discussion action by the committee, have it noted, because you have to put it on the agenda saying, you know, that it's noted. So if it mostly is discussion, but then it comes to something that might be a discussion action, have it be that the two board members for that committee are the only ones that are, you know, and make that noted.
No, they can't take any action.
No,
The committee
they can
members
only
can't.
recommend.
Then
Yeah,
you just
that's-
recommend.
That's what I mean, sorry. Not necessarily that they will take the action, but that they will, you know, move forward with it out the other.
But I think, yeah, it's a good point, but in this case, you would have a special meeting. It would be planning and steering items. So the planning and steering looks at policies and plans, right? So like last time, we had a list of policies. The direction we received was go back and look at some updating these. So what we're gonna present to you on May 3rd are a bunch of draft updated policies that you guys get to edit some more, kind of like what we just did with our MSR thing. And then we would take that and then we would update it. And my guess is if it's ready for prime time, we would then take it to a regular meeting for approval as a policy or something like that.
Well, see, and then that way
That's
we can actually maybe cut the time in half from getting some of these policies done.
Right?
So,
That and the other 100 people I got working for me to update all these policies.
all right, so can we
My
all
hand is
just
all over
agree
Emily to
that the planning and steering committee meeting will make it a special?
Give it a try.
So,
Fine with me.
okay, so my next question would be, is that Erwin is the chair of the planning and steering.
Well, it's not gonna be a planning steering committee meeting.
It'll just be a special
special
meeting.
meeting.
Dealing with just.
Okay.
Dealing with planning and steering.
And no, you can't hand over the gavel, so you would have to.
That's what I wanted to
We knew what you were trying to do.
Yeah, we picked up on that.
Yeah.
Before we break to our closed session, are you intending to meet with our newest director and so she knows what her committee assignments are?
do. No,
Okay.
Well, I just,
because we're gonna have to review that, we're gonna have to make a vote, are we getting rid of personnel and putting it on finance? So I can't meet with her and discuss things without people either wanting to make an adjustment, that's gonna take the whole board to do that.
yeah, I think just
Why
real
can't that
quick
be
on that, I think we would,
Agenda.
Yep, we can put it on the May agenda.
you know, put on the May agenda, I mean, at this point, I don't think we have to rush to it. I do have a request of our two other newest board members. I believe both of you still have your printed copy of director's handbooks.
Yes,
And those are the only two that we have, so it would be great if we could get one of those back and hand it to Director Beaver.
okay, you
Plus,
got it,
plus we wanna work on that.
yes, we
Yeah,
do.
yeah, that's one
And
of
I
our
have
projects.
one to look at before we can work on it.
Okay, I can bring it down tomorrow, could you remind me?
Or could you bring it down?
I think I'll make him mow tomorrow, so maybe I'll bring it down. Okey dokey, I cannot find my agenda in my packet, here it is, okay, here we go, I got it. Okay, anything from the floor before we adjourn to closed session?
I'm sorry to interrupt. We were covering board member items and we've only talked to
Oh,
Director
yep.
Lincoln. We didn't give the others a
That's
chance.
true. Okay,
I have nothing. I said all these.
you have anything? Nope. Have anything?
Nope.
I have nothing either.
Okay.
So the board will adjourn to closed session to discuss the following items. Public employee to consider performance evaluation of general manager pursuant to GC, Government Code Section 54957B1, and that's a 6-month review. So we are going, it is now 9:41 and we are headed to closed session.